thanks for having me. I don't get here as much as I'd like to, and Ross knows there's reasons for that, because I'd love to be here, and I certainly have been part of this a few different times when we were meeting at the Olympic, and I don't know if you realise how kind of rare this is, the idea to have a gathering of men in one place. It's such an encouraging thing, you know, and I look forward to it. There's so many faces here that I just love seeing, and some that, no, I was going to say some that I didn't mean that. I mean some that I haven't met before, some that I haven't met before. So what I want to do tonight is something a little bit different. I guess when you picture a testimony, maybe you think that I'm going to talk a lot. But my plan tonight is not to do that much, but actually just to share my testimony more through the songs that I write. So for those who don't know my background, I grew up singing a lot, but wasn't particularly musical, which is interesting. I used to play the bass guitar, which if anyone knows, it's kind of just what you play when you can't play anything else. No offence if you're a really good bass player. I think it's one down from drums, so not sure. But from my perspective, I can still remember actually praying to God, can you help me? I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but can you help me learn the piano? And part of the reason I wanted to learn the piano was because I realised that playing bass guitar and singing is not a great thing to listen to. And that it also helps you to write songs, you know, because on a piano it's a little bit easier than, you know, on a bass guitar, or if you can't play any instrument. So I'm kind of self-taught on the piano, which will become very obvious once you hear me. Because it's funny that people reckon, you know, that I can play, and someone said, did you say I was a musician? That's interesting. But, you know, from my perspective, that's not how I see myself. I just see that I can probably just play enough piano so that I can share my songs, you know, which to me is a real blessing. And so, you know, I can only see you with my glasses on, but I can't read the music, so... Testimony, this is the song I sing. You are my one and only, you are my everything. I was lost, but now I am found. I am blind, but now I see. Only you, Lord, can make that difference in me. I was dead, but now I'm alive. I was bound, but now I'm free. Only you, Lord, can make that difference in me. This is my testimony. This is the song I sing. You are my one and only. You are my everything, and I was hiding from your love, and now I'm standing in the grace that's from above, and I was hiding from your love, and now I'm standing in the grace that's from above. 'Cause this is my testimony. This is the song I sing. You are my one and only. You are my everything. Yeah, for me, my testimony is a little bit different to other people, but don't you think it's unique that all of our testimonies are different, but they're kind of all the same? It's interesting. I remember Ross saying, "Hey, mate, come share your testimony. It's different, And you think to yourself, it's funny, it's different, but it's actually kind of the same, because I've heard a lot of testimonies in my life, and most of them talk about how you weren't with God and then you had something happen that then introduces you to Jesus and your life changes, Mine's no different to other people, but I guess mine's quite unique in that it started quite young, so I don't know about most people here, but I became a Christian when I was about 10. Now, for some people, and on reflection, I actually don't even really feel comfortable that maybe I actually really knew what was going on, when I think back. But at the time, I remember that we had a guest speaker. It was a guy from prison who had become a Christian in prison and just had this powerful testimony. And I was just blown away by it. Me and my brother went up together and we were just blubbering and just became a Christian. Bang, like that. But it's interesting for me, though, my testimony is actually of the journey after that, because it's very early on. A lot of things happened between then and when I would consider that I probably started to understand what my faith was actually about and what faith is really about. And so actually not long after we both became Christians, when I was about 10, we moved. We used to live in Airport West, just around the corner, and we moved to Marysville. I don't know, do you guys know where Marysville is? Sort of up in the hills, beautiful part of town. Part of Victoria, and but went from a big town like Airport West to Marysville, which is a town of about 400. So I went from a school of about 1,000 to a school of 80. And so just some major changes. My dad gave up being a principal and a school teacher to go and actually, I don't know if you know, there's a Christian campsite up at Marysville called ESA, which actually unfortunately got taken out by the bushfires recently. And so we moved up there for that. And when we moved up there was obviously lots of changes that happened, but because you were moving to a country town. But I really loved it. I don't know what Tim thought and the others thought, but I really loved that country life. You kind of knew everyone. My dad took over kind of as like a preacher, if you like, or like almost like a pastor of the local church, because there wasn't many people. He was quite significant in the local church. And sort of life was good, and that was sort of from about 10 till about 14, something like that. And when I was 14, I actually went on camp. I remember I went on camp up to, I think it was Mount Buller. And I remember that when I got back from camp, my mum, because school was a long way from home, my mum met me at school, which she didn't usually do because we caught the bus home, yeah. So she met us and took us to a park, and I remember she sat us down and she said that while I was on camp, my dad left. Now, that's significant in any sort of, chapter of anyone's life. But remember, so he's the pastor of the local church, ran off with a lady from the church, with the family that we knew, and basically never came back after that point. And I don't know how significant your dad is in your life, but when I reflect on that, I always think how that shook me, when you're 14. What he was kind of everything I looked up to. He was certainly, at that time, I was probably a bit naive, thought he was, he had everything together, and he was pretty much perfect dad at that point. And then made that choice, and that's always hurt me that he left while I was on camp. So I think he left on the Wednesday and I didn't get back so I was also the last to kind of find out. But also what happened within that's a pretty tough time, isn't it? I would imagine for any teenager, it's a pretty tough time. But also around that time, I can't remember exactly, within the next 18 months or around that same time, all 4 of our grandparents passed away. So you imagine, mate, can you imagine what that time was like for my mum? So her parents were killed in a car accident. My dad's parents died of 2 separate sort of, I think it was, heart disease or something like that. But if you can imagine what's happened in that time frame, that you go from having this family setting, where everything's in place, and all of a sudden it just imploded. And I can remember that, and then if you imagine in the middle of all that, because my mum was now by herself with 4 kids, and her parents had passed away, we actually had to move as well. So I don't know if you've had to move much, but that idea that all of a sudden, now we had to move. So we moved to a new area, and so I just remember how disruptive that time was in my life. And you know what? I wish I could tell you how, I really relied on God and I was just a great person and God sustained. But I was terrible. I was a terrible person during that phase. Real pain in the butt to my mum, which I really regret. Wish I hadn't been. But
as you can imagine, I was kind of just rebelling a bit in my head. Everything had fallen apart. Dad was gone. But then what happened that really probably, I don't know how you would describe it, really kind of finished off the disruption in our family was, I think it was about 18 months after moving, my mum came and told us that she was going to get remarried, and we're like, we're pretty happy for her. And she ended up getting remarried to the husband of the lady that my dad ran off with. It's all right, you're allowed to laugh. It's all good. you laugh or cry. It's like, permanent wife swap. Yeah, permanent wife swap. We were way ahead of our time. But then what happened was, if you picture it, then what happened was not only did that sort of marriage happen, but then we all had to move back to where we used to live into a house together with all of the two sets of kids. So I always call it like a retarded Brady Bunch type setup and it is, mate, I'm telling you. Without Alice, no housekeeper either, which is rubbish. But so if you can imagine, so you're living in this environment where they didn't really like us and we didn't really like them. They hated our dad, we hated their mum. You're with me? And then you kind of put it all into one house. And this is all happening at so my brother, he would have been 14, 16, 17, whatever, and I'm kind of a bit behind that, where you're sort of 12, 14, 16, 15. For me, it just set me off, and unfortunately, again, I'd love to tell you that that's what brought me to Christ, but it wasn't, because that's really what blew my life up, and then I became very rebellious. I sort of, my focus became on doing rebellious stuff, so I got into stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, into parties and all that sort of stuff, just trying to do my own thing. And I guess from my perspective that I was thankful. My testimony is not so much about salvation as is about God's faithfulness. That's really my testimony. That it's not like I don't even really have a part in my story where I was just really bad and then I just became good. I feel like that God honoured the commitment I made to Him when I was young, and He didn't give up on me. And to be honest, you might have the same story, but I got saved by a girl, I met her again through my brother, and because my brother and I are married to sisters, which adds to the story. It's all right. That's legal. Just relax. We're not breaking any laws there. She was hot as. But I remember meeting her, and that part of bringing me, if you like, to faith was the challenge of wanting to be a better person for her and, change my life. And I really ended up kind of trying to pull my life together so I could get this girl that deserved better. So I'm so thankful for the placement of her in my life and for the fact that she's still in my life. But I don't know how you reflect on yourself. But one of the things that I struggled with, because understand that I felt like I'd made a commitment, but I wasn't living like that. And I actually really felt like I was a bit of a fraud, because, and I'll tell you a horrible story if you want an idea of how bad kind of where I was at in my life. I remember that I was actually leading worship at a church, so just like this, and I saw a guy come in, and I remember seeing him come in, I'm thinking, I know that guy. I went to high school with that guy. And I remember being really excited that he had walked in. And so I went up to see him. So remember, I told you I became a Christian when I was 10. I went to high school with this guy for 6 years. The first thing he said to me was, "So when did you become a Christian?" Ouch, wow. Can you imagine that? I'm literally like, wowee. How bad a Christian can you be? That he actually didn't even know I was one. And so you're with me? That kind of gives you an indication of that I knew God. I was from a Christian family. I'd given my heart to God, but I just wasn't living like that. And I don't know how you feel about God sometimes, but this was a song that I wrote when I was really trying to wrestle how I could, just wrestle with why God loved me. I don't know if you've thought that before. Can't believe show your love and to set me free. It's true, there really is no greater love than that. And Lord, why do you love me? Even though you know what is inside of me. It's hard to understand how you could love me as I am. But I'm so glad that you love me, and that in your eyes there's no one else above me. And all I want to do is make you proud of me. I'm so glad that you love me. I'm so glad that you love me. Another question that I ask myself a lot, I don't know, I probably ask a lot of questions, is I don't know if you ever dwell on where would you be if you didn't have God? You know, what do you reckon your life would look like? Where would you be? It's just something that I think about a lot, and what I've come to the conclusion of is that I'd be lost, you know, which is what I was before I found him, before I met him, before I knew about him, before I experienced him, before I before I had the opportunity to see the impact that he can make on my life. So I want to share this song with you. Where would I go without you in my life to let me know it's not the path for me and not to go? Where would I go? And where would I be without you in my life and guiding me and opening my eyes so I can see? Where would I be? I'd be lost, still trying to make my way back to the cross, still on my knees considering the cost. I would be lost if it weren't for the cross. And where would I be if I followed other people just like me? Like the blind leading the blind so carelessly. Where would I be? I'd be lost, still trying to make my way back to the cross, still on my knees considering the cost. I would be lost if it weren't for the cross. If it was for the cross, I'd be Still trying to make my way back to the cross. Still on my knees, considering the cost. Oh, I would be lost if it weren't for the cross. I want to tell you a quick story of God's faithfulness. Because probably if this story ends differently, I may not be here. How long ago, man? It must have been almost 20 years ago. I used to be a teacher in a high school, and we were going on a school camp, and part of going on the school camp was just piling onto some buses, and I've done that hundreds of times, probably as a teacher. And so I was a teacher out at Werribee, and so I don't know, does everyone know the highway that comes into the city? So we were going along the highway in sort of like a convoy of buses, 3 buses. All the teachers were sitting up the front of the bus. And what happened was, I'll try and explain it as best as I can. So we're in 3 lanes, right? And we're in this lane and we're going towards the city this way. And what happened was I was right at the front with my feet in the stairwell. Make sense? Right, so right up the front, driver's there, and I'm sitting here with my feet there. I remember looking at the driver, and the driver was doing this. Right, and I'm thinking, oh, is he, like reaching under his seat for something, or I don't know, what's he doing? It's bizarre behaviour because I'm thinking, mate, it's a bus, man. Like you might do that in your car, but don't go looking for Chewy now, you know. But anyway, then what happened? He reached down again, but this time he fell out of his driver's seat into the stairs, like right in front of me. Knocked himself unconscious. So now we're doing 100 kilometres an hour. Bus full of kids, no driver, which is a significant issue. How bright am I? I'd worked this out all on my own. So then what happened was I was sitting here, my mate was sitting next to me, my feet were over him, I could see him there, I could see the empty seat. And all I remember thinking is, I reckon you got to have a driver. As you can see, man, I really thought this through. And so what I did was I jumped in. Now, what I want to take you through, because it's significant, because this is where I believe, and you'll understand what I mean when I reflect on God's faithfulness, right? These were all of the things that I thought before I jumped in, which was literally that, right? Have you ever heard people tell stories? It was like time stood still, and time, literally, that's what it felt like. Because here's the things I think about, and I'm finally talking to an audience who will understand, okay? Because you'll know about cars and stuff. Steve, we're going to talk buses, bro. This is literally your specialty. This will be like your special. No, but you know what happened was, here's the decision that I made. As I was jumping in, it was a manual, okay? So that's pretty rare now because most buses, remember, it was 20 years ago. And I was really fortunate because I had this beautiful HR special at home with five on the floor and a massive clutch like a bus anyway. And I remember that as I was making a decision, I'm thinking, here's one thing I know. Every bus driver I've ever been with doesn't look like they can change the gears that easily. And they're the driver. You know, yeah, no worries, mate, find it, don't grind it. You know, you remember yelling that? Oh, it was only me, all right. And so I remember thinking that. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to try and change gears. It's one thing I'm not going to do. So, but what I decided is, because I knew what a clutch was, which is funny because I tell my students, they're like, oh, it's a clutch. Oh, shut up. I don't even want to speak to you. If you don't know what a clutch is, get out. No, is that I jumped in, I sunk the clutch in. That was my first thing. Disengages the engine. You guys know what it does. I don't have to talk you through it. But it doesn't stop the bus. Here's the other thing I worked out. Don't hit the brakes. That's probably not going to work well with the bus full of kids. And it's not going to work when you're doing now 90 Ks in the middle of the freeway, right? So I had to kind of think of a plan for how I was going to slowly slow the bus down, and that was sink the clutch, and then I was just going to work the brake. The problem is when I got in there, I realised, I'd never driven a bus before, and the steering wheel was a lot bigger than I thought. I remember going to change lanes, and I did a head check, and then I realised, okay, that's not going to work because you can't see nothing. It was just like just a seat. And I remember also looking at the side mirror and thinking, no, okay, that's a long way away. Like as in this is a long bus. Okay, I get it. I'm driving a bus. And then I remember trying to indicate, but you guys will probably already know before I indicated, and that turned on the wipers, which was really relaxing. They start going, tiki, while you're in a high trauma situation. It was fantastic. And then I couldn't work out how to turn them off because I was now in high shock. Anyway, so I managed to move from, so we're in this lane. I managed to move from that lane. And what I did was, because when I got in we were veering, I actually just drove it into the middle emergency lane and did, I think, a pretty good job of parking it, considering I'd never driven a bus before. And so, but then I parked the bus and then it hits me, what the heck just happened? And I get all that, you hear about like white knuckle, and I went into a bit of shock. So the staff, while I was doing all that, were sort of giving first aid to the driver. The driver had actually had a heart attack. That's why he was going down that side. So he had a heart attack, collapse. And so I remember now I'm kind of frozen on the side, sort of thinking what happened. And then all of a sudden, it was obviously a bit time later, police came. And then they started, I remember I was in this position here, and then someone knocked on the window here, and I'm trying to work out how someone's knocking on the window while I'm driving a bus, because I don't think I'd worked out I'd stopped yet. Anyway, so he says, let us in, because we need to deal with the driver. And so he came around to the door. I don't know if you've ever seen a bus, but I couldn't find it's like a disco. The lights are coming on, the hazards are on. I'm hitting every single button. And I kid you not, who watches the wrestling? The Undertaker? Okay, so the bus driver sits up like the Undertaker, like boom, like he comes out of unconsciousness. Hey, he reaches over, opens the door, and then goes unconscious again. I'm serious. How could I make that up? I was like, so maybe he was, he talked up, maybe he could hear us, whatever, like we didn't know. But then, it's quite, it's funny but sad. But then he was getting hit by the door. He's getting hit by the door like this, which I found it funny. Later, I wasn't laughing then. And the ambulance came in, they took him away. And in the end, I think he technically speaking died about 3 or 4 times on the way. His heart kept giving way. And in the end, they did urgent heart surgery on him that day, and he survived. But so now the driver's safe. One of the interesting things was most of the students didn't even know what happened, because, what are you doing at the back of the bus? People don't even look at the front, they're just sitting up the back. And I can still remember there was a kid with headphones, standing up in the aisle with his back to me. And we'd stopped, and all of a sudden, he takes his headphones off and he goes, "Why is Smitty driving?" Like this, as a trying to work out, I just thought I'd have a crack, why not? Just classic teenager, didn't even know anything had happened. So then what happens, and you imagine this in today's, it would never happen today, but what happened was a driver came, jumped in, drove us into a car park, and I remember it hit me, and I remember going to try and ring my wife because I was really upset. I was like, man, something major just happened. I couldn't get through to her. And I got through to my dad, and I talked to him for a bit, and I kind of cried a bit, and mate, Dad's full on, man, but he's going, it's all right, son, whatever. We went back out to the car park, and now there was Channel 7, 9, 10, all the news crews were there, trying to film me coming onto the bus, and some of them asked if they could get on and reenact it. You're like, yeah, absolutely, no worries. I'm Sandra Bullock on Flaming Speed. No, not going to happen. I can remember that. But then do you know what the principal decided? The principal said, we're going to keep going to camp. So you imagine what happened. Everyone, kids through trauma, back on the bus, right? Everybody back on the bus. I get back into the same seat. They bring in a new driver. What do you reckon I was doing for 4 hours? I didn't take my eyes off him. I don't think I didn't even blink. I'm literally just going, I'm checking in, mate. You all right? How's your heart? But imagine this, I kid you not, early on, this was before he learnt how psycho I was, I remember saying to him, mate, you all right? He goes, no. I'm like, yeah, no, mate, it's too early. Too early for heart attack jokes, mate, from the new driver. Yeah, well, as the guy's holding me back, I'm thinking, mate, you won't need a heart attack, I'm telling you. And so, anyway, we drove to the camp. Drove to the camp, and where we drove to was actually a houseboat camp. I know, it sounds pretty cool camp, yeah. So I went onto the Murray. Have you ever been on the Murray? You don't get any reception, right? So I went onto the Murray for 5 days. Remember, hadn't seen my wife. None of the kids had seen their parents. Nothing. Actually, I missed the thing, because on halfway up, the principal rang me and he said, do you want to stop, pull over and give like a story to 7, 9, 10, because they're following you? I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And he goes, yeah, just get off, tell them what happened. That way everyone will know what happened. So you'd love that, wouldn't you, as a parent, just finding out on the news? I'm like, it's a great strategy. Let's do this. Anyway, so pull over, you know, and can you imagine, you'd be able to picture him, you might have been him at school. Can you picture the worst kid in your class to interview? That's who they got. They got this kid who decided to go, oh, it's crazy, man, it was out of control. I can't believe he saved us, which is not actually what happened. And so it actually ended up making the story worse, because everyone thought like it was chaos, like as if the bus was sideways and I was up on the top trying to get back in. Anyway, so that didn't work. But then I remember we went on the trip, we came back so after 5 days, and remember another 4-hour bus trip back. Like I couldn't deal with the anxiety I couldn't believe that in one day I went from, what do you even think about on a bus, to just watching the driver for 4 hours. Anyway, I remember we were coming back into the school, and the principal rings me again. He goes, hey Nick, do you want to get out? I'm like, what do you mean, do I? Yeah. Want to go back? He goes, no, I think maybe you should get out before you get into the school. I go, what do you mean? He goes, there's a lot of people here. I'm like, okay, you know, parents. He goes, no, like more than that. I'm thinking, I go, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, there's a lot of people who want to thank you. I'm like, what? Because I hadn't even thought about it, yeah? Like I literally just thought, I remember somebody asking me, you know, it's so good that you saved the kids' lives. So I go, I was really trying to save my life. I was thinking, it's all right, kids, I've got it. No, that is not what I was thinking. I felt so bad that they all were thanking me for saving their lives. I was like, I was the first to die, mate. I was up the front. It was more about being practical. But I remember, right, so then if you can picture it, and Harb, I don't know, were you there? I don't know if anyone was there on the other side of it, do you know what I mean? But my picture of it is, what happened is when we pulled in, they literally made like a guard of honour, like 2 lines coming from the door of the bus. And I'm like, yeah, everything in me's thinking, how cool is this, mate? Look at me, I'm a flaming hero. This is exactly what I deserve. Anyway, by about the 3rd person, I was a blubbering mess, because they're going, oh, you saved my granddaughter, you saved my life, I love you. You know, like this, each person. And it was the first time that it kind of hit me that, like, people were thinking what could have happened, you with me, rather than what happened. Because, you know, for me, I was like, how cool is that? I was able to do that. And that actually... that actually started a whole series of real issues with me around trying to come to terms with what had happened, because you imagine I'd be walking down the hall and I'd see a kid and he'd just start crying. Like, you saved my life? You know, it's like, I'm just like, okay, yeah, morning. As you're going along the hallway. And then I realised it was so significant for people. And you know what? I'd never thought about it until I think my dad said to me, he'd just following up, he said something like, you could have died. Like I hadn't actually thought about it. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like split second, and I felt real uncomfortable that people were giving me like credit for just literally just, oh well, just jumped in and thought, let's have a crack, and it became a lot bigger than that. And so, I got a bravery award from I think it was the police or the transport accident, TAC. I got a bravery award from, I think it was the ambulance or something, and I got a bravery award from the school in this big ceremony. And I can still remember just being really overwhelmed at that ceremony, that people were making it so much about me that I felt really uncomfortable. And and I remember it got so bad for me, they actually sent me to counselling, which is ironic because it was a Christian school. Anyway, they sent me to counselling and said, I think you need some help. Like I'm thinking, is that other than Jesus? But anyway, I went there, and I remember him going, this is what the guy was saying to me. He's going, because I was struggling to come to terms with what was happening. He's going, who saved the bus? Like this, like he was Rocky's corner man. Yeah, who saved the bus? You did. You saved the bus. Yeah, like this, like trying to pump me up. I'm thinking, no. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, really, it's just what God allowed. Yeah. Yeah, and I started to think that there was things that God had done in my life. He'd made me someone that thinks clearly, someone that would take action, and he plonked me in that seat, and he allowed that to happen. And you know what? I never went back, because I got what I needed out of it, which was just the confirmation that, hey, God knows what he's doing. He's faithful. He'll put you where you need to be. He'll give you the things that you need. He'll make sure that you're in the right place you know. And, you know, for me, it was such a powerful thing to learn. And it's so funny because I feel like I could have learnt a lot of other things out of that were not right. You know, because a lot of people pumped up my tyres. And if you had said to me before that, do you want to be a hero? I would have said, absolutely. But, you know, after it, I didn't want to. Because it actually becomes uncomfortable if you really see things through the lens that, well, hang on, God puts you there, God equips you, God gives you the opportunity, you know, and so, like, how can you take any credit? But it's a good story. And when I'm walking through the valley and I'm feeling all alone, I put my trust in Him who never will forsake me, and to Him I'm holding on to all the promises He made. I'm holding on to Him who conquers death and grave. And though the trials and the challenges may come, oh, I have hope, I have faith, and I'm holding on. And when I'm wandering through the nights, when I've lost my way and I'm on my own, my hope is in the one in whom there is no darkness, and to Him I'm holding on to all the promises He made. I'm holding on to Him who conquers death and grave. And though the trials and the challenges may come, oh, I have hope, I have faith, and I'm holding on. And when the storm rages around me and I'm feeling all hope is gone, I look to Him who speaks and wind and waves obey Him, and to Him I'm holding on. I'm holding on to all the promises He made. I'm holding on to Him who conquers death and grave. And though the trials and the challenges may come, oh, I have hope, I have faith, and I'm holding on. For those who haven't heard much about Jesus, one of the things that most of us would share at the centre of why we came to Him was when we realised that He died for us. Now, that might be something that's hard to understand. Maybe you think, mate, that's a fairy tale. But for a lot of the people in this room, you know, we really believe that Christ died for us, you know, and that was part of Him making a way for us to then have a relationship with Him. But, you know, one of the most amazing things about the crucifixion, or about the crucifixion story, if you don't understand it, is that not only do we believe that He died for us, but we also believe that He didn't have to. You know, that it was a choice. He actually went there and said, I'm actually going to die for you. Like, it wasn't like He was forced there, it was just an accident, or, you know, like He was like, oh, I guess I got to do it. You know, He literally went there because He knew that that's what we needed. And, you know, I can remember reflecting on the idea that, because the Bible says that even the nails couldn't actually hold Him. If He wanted to, He could have just jumped off. So it's literally, and you think of what he was going through and how that must have hit him. And so you know what I started to reflect on? I was saying, isn't that interesting? Because it actually, what I started thinking was, it actually wasn't the nails that held him there. That it was actually his love for us that held him there. He stayed there, saw it out, finished it, so that people can hear about it, experience it, and then claim it, you know? And so I wrote this song. This song's hard for me to sing, man. Usually it's an Easter song. I can only do it once. The crowd wanted to crucify you, though you done nothing wrong. But you stood there in silence, 'cause it was your plan all along. And for the joy set before you, you knew it had to be this way. And you showed how much you loved us all on Calvary that day. And it wasn't the nails that held you on the cross. It was the love you have for sinners and the lost. And though you were without sin, I know it was mine you chose to bear. And it wasn't the nails, it was your love that held you there. With a crown of thorns upon your head, you took that walk of shame. They laughed at you and mocked you with every different name. Though every step was painful, you knew you had to see it through. I reckon one of the toughest things that I've found about Christianity is doing it every day. You know, I think if I reflect back, I wish that's what someone told me a little bit more about Christianity. Is it's not really, although that first confession and belief and, you know, me going down the front, man, there's been some real tough times between then and now. And one of the things, you know, but when I reflect on God's faithfulness is that, you know, I really always picture that God has always just been there, but I keep going there and then back and there and then back. I think sometimes we picture that we're here and God goes there and then back and there. You with me? Does that help picture? You know, that I think if you've given your heart to God, He's there, right? And He's just wanting to draw you back. Come back, man. Come back. You know, He doesn't want you to go there, but if you go there, He wants you to come back. You know, so, and for me, one of the things that that I really want to have as part of my faith is that Jesus is enough, that I don't have to keep doing that yo-yo approach to faith, you know, and maybe this song resonates with you, I guess, because my songs are kind of like my diary, you know, and I want you to understand I never write a song for you. You with me? It's not, oh mate, this would be good for Daniel here. It doesn't cross my mind, because most of the time the song is for me, and then when I share it I find people go, wow man, as if I wrote it for you. Do you understand? And I don't mean that arrogantly, I mean because I share how I feel and I try and put it into songs. And maybe you've felt like this before, because I don't like this feeling, I don't want this feeling of constantly of the bouncing. You know, I really want to be able to say that Jesus is enough. Your feet again, just holding on, waiting for the storm to end. Be my shelter, Be my guiding light. Be my portion every day and night. Oh Jesus, you alone are my everything, and you have made my soul to sing that Jesus, you're enough. Oh Jesus, you alone can satisfy, and with all my heart I cry that Jesus, you're enough. Jesus, you're enough. I want to share about something recent, and I feel like I can share with brothers. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. The last few years have probably been challenging. Probably from a family perspective, challenging. But what it's probably challenged for me more than anything was actually, it challenged me as to whether I actually truly believed everything God says. And that's just because my experience at the time was that God was not doing in the situation what I wanted him to do. Have you had that happen? You're praying, you're being faithful, you're asking, but it's not happening, And what I discovered, and some of you will know this story because when our church, which meets next door, we have a camp once a year, and we usually write like a camp song or a couple of camp songs. And one of the years, a couple of years ago, it was freely loving, talking about that one of the greatest calls of a Christian person is just to love, so forgive and love and love and love and love. And I wrote a camp song. And when I say that, that's really taking some credit for basically Corinthians 13. So, but basically what I did is I rewrote because, to me, Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind. You probably, even if you're not a Christian, you probably heard it at weddings. It's pretty popular, something. And so I used that to kind of write a song. And some people will know this story, but, the verse goes, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy. It sort of goes through a whole stack of things. It says, love bears all things, love believes all things, love hopes all things, love endures all things. And then at the end of that verse, it actually says, love never fails, right? Which is probably what you've heard. And it was amazing. People know this story because I shared it on the camp, that when I shared the song, for some reason I hadn't put that line in the song. So you think I've used the whole of Corinthians 13. Almost none of the words are mine. It's just kind of tweaks of that chapter. And the people know it. I was up there singing the song, and I got to there, and I'm thinking, I didn't put it in. It's not in the words. And people will know it actually really confronted me that I actually had to come to terms with the fact that I actually feel like I didn't put it in the song because I didn't believe it. Because at the time it felt like love was failing me, like I was trying to love through the situation and it wasn't working. And it was just to me, it was an amazing challenge to me to just say, you don't give up because love is not working right now. Do you know what I mean? And what I want to share about in my testimony is that the things that were happening in my life, that phrase was proved true. You understand? It just wasn't true at the time. That it actually was right. That love will actually conquer things and it'll get through things that other things won't. Your strategies and your parenting ideas and, like your philosophies. What I found was the one thing that eventually worked was love, So I want to share that with you because for me this song is a constant reminder of the journey of going from not having the words even in the song to now, when it comes, you watch it. It literally makes the song. I don't want to brag about it, but it's like the best bit of the song. You're like, how could you leave it out? You'll look and go, that's unreal. Why did you take that out? Well, it's because in my head, I think it was like almost psychological. And so now this is a song that I really love to sing. If I speak in tongues of angels, but I have not love, I'm like a clanging cymbal that is ringing out. And if I fathom mysteries and prophesy, without love I'm nothing, and I'll tell you why. 'Cause Jesus says to me, if you really love me, consider this. Am I everything you need when you face another test? Are you in love with me the way that I'm in love with you? Freely loving, sacrificing, obeying too. And if I give up all that I have to the poor, I gain nothing if it's not love at the core. And if I give my body up in sacrifice, without love it's nothing, and I'll tell you why. 'Cause Jesus says to me that if you really love me, consider this. Am I everything you need when you face another test? Are you in love with me the way that I'm in love with you? Freely loving, sacrificing, obeying too. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it doesn't boast. It is not proud, it is not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of my wrongs. It finds no joy in any evil, but rejoices in the truth, and it bears all things. It believes all things, and it hopes all things. It endures all things. Love bears all things. It believes all things. Love hopes all things. Love endures all things. And love never fails. And to Jesus I can sing that I really love you more than this. You're everything I need when I face another test. I am in love with you the way that you're in love with me. Freely loving, sacrificing, obeying too. Thanks, guys.